No, I didn't even know. All right, very well. Are we ready to call the meeting to order? Ms. Clay, you give me the high sign. All right, so this is the regular business meeting of the Children's Services Council of Leon County, a publicly noticed open government in the sunshine compliant meeting for June 16th of 2022. No, I'm not going to remind the public this is a workshop. This is not a workshop. This is a meeting. This is our regular business meeting. I'll just remind folks there's opportunities for public comment in a couple of spots in the agenda. If you do wish to submit a comment, if you would, please fill out a comment card. Give that to Ms. Clay, and she'll make certain that you're give me a notice of your opportunity to make comment. If something happens and you haven't filled out a comment card and you want to comment, I'm sure we will be able to accommodate. But if you could fill out a comment card, that'll help us. But at this time, I'll ask Ms. Clay to please call the roll.
Dr. Glenn.
Present.
Mr. Mitchell.
I'm here.
Ms. Connor.
Present.
Commissioner Cummings.
Present.
Superintendent Hannah.
Here.
School Board Chair Jones.
Present.
Ms. McFadden.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Watts.
Here.
Chair, you have Judge Strostrom. You have a quorum.
Very well. Thank you so much, Ms. Clay. First item is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move
So-
approval of the agenda. Yes, sir.
Moved by Commissioner Cummings. Is
I'll
there a
second it.
second? Seconded by Mr. Mitchell. Any discussion of the agenda? Changes, additions, corrections, alterations, or deletions? Seeing none will show that the agenda is approved. Next is general public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any comment cards?
Yes, Your Honor, and we have several public comments.
All right, so we have several public comments. I generally don't pay very close attention to our time limits, but we do have a time limit in our bylaws. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, in our bylaws. And I would just ask, I don't want to have to cut anybody off, but I just ask that people keep their comments as concise as you can. Who's our first comment card?
Our first comment is Sandra Nieder, and when you get to the microphone, if you can restate your name, because I might mess it up.
You are recognized.
Good afternoon, Judge and members and staff. My name is Sandy Neidert. I am a faculty member at FSU. I have spent my entire adult career working, that's 35 years, working with children and families, either working directly with them or on behalf of them. And believe it or not, I prepared my comments this morning before I heard you all. And I am so happy to hear the comments that I'm hearing. You'll hear them echoed in mine. So my three biggest takeaways from the comprehensive needs assessment all lead me to request for you all to have a focused response to the needs assessment. My first takeaway is it's overwhelming. The depth and breadth of need is great. Some of the data cited in the analysis show Leon County fares better than the statewide average, I believe referred to as assets. For instance, Leon County continues to perform roughly on par with the students at the state level. And all that would be great news, except it still leaves 40% of the third graders without the ability to read. 25% of women don't have prenatal care. This is overwhelming. As Children's Services Council members and Leon County citizens who can see human potential, we must aim to address the needs of all Leon County's kids in every zip code and every school, even the Title I schools, ensuring they have the opportunity to learn and develop so they can become our county's biggest assets. Overwhelming. My second takeaway is it's overwhelming, but the solutions are within our reach if we carefully prioritize our approach. And this is when timing really matters. When considering how to get the best bang for our buck, our county's limited funds are taxpayer dollars that you're guarding. We would be wise to address the needs of our youngest Leon County citizens. Do you know that when you're born, all of your organs are completely developed except your brain? They grow larger, but they're developed. Your brain is not. Everything that happens to you in the first 3 to 5 years of your life builds the architecture of your brain. After that critical period of development and explosion of the architecture of the brain, by the time you're 5, 90% of your brain is developed. This is why world economists continue to argue for early investments. We can do the same intervention in 3rd grade and not get nearly the bang for our buck if we do it when they're 3. If we focus on the needs of our youngest citizens, just think of the future potential, how we can grow economically and thrive socially. 3rd, it's overwhelming, but solutions are in our reach if we focus on intervention and prevention services that are evidence-based. We live in a time where extensive research has been done, and we have listings of programs, rigorously studied programs that show positive results. If we use these programs, with our youngest children, we can have good outcomes. So in summary, prioritizing our community's youngest children is one of our most important investments. I applaud your selection of the 3 priorities that we've seen. Why not begin your work focusing on the needs of parents and young children in each of those categories? For instance, if we want success in school and life, begin with the work of how children learn in their first few years of life. If we want to reduce adverse childhood experiences, why not begin our work with the safety and well-being of young children, why their brains are experiencing this explosion of growth? If we want stable and nurturing families, why not first assist parents with young children? A focused approach on children in their first 1,000 days, or 0 to 5, where you're simultaneously working with the families, the parents of children. We can do this. A collective impact initiative focused on this, focused on specific geographic areas and demographic groups. It's not overwhelming, and we're highly likely to succeed.
Our next public comment, Emily Fritz.
Ms. Fritz, you are recognized.
Well, thank you and congratulations for getting the needs assessment. I enjoyed your workshop. And I was really glad to see that y'all look like you're going to focus and be more targeted. You know, up until then, it's been all over the map, but it looks like you're going to be more focused. And I think that's a good thing. And that's how your dollars can go further and you can make the most impact. Today, you're going to be discussing the millage rate. And I just want to remind you that if you keep the millage rate the same as it is at the 0.375, you are technically raising taxes. That's because, according to Florida law, if more money comes in based upon the same millage rate, it is considered a tax increase. And the reason why you'll get more money, which your chart in your document, in your agenda says, is because of the increase in property values. So what I'm here to plead to you is to please keep the millage rate as it is. You need to think about what's going on in the lives of the people who have to pay this tax. If you've been to the gas station or the grocery store recently, you know that inflation is really eating up everybody's income. And by keeping the millage rate the same, you can still get a lot done with the money that will come in, but you can also make the pain that the people in Leon County are experiencing with the inflation. You can minimize it by keeping it the same. And again, you will get more money. So that is my recommendation. Thank you much.
Thank you so much.
Next public comment, Peggy Bowen.
Ms. Bowen, you are recognized. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I just wanted to say that I agree with Emily's comments. I also wanted to reiterate also, forget keeping the millage rate the same, lower it. We are getting killed with gas taxes, with gas prices, $5 a gallon. It's only going to go higher. Those of us that already have to pay property taxes are going to be most hit by this. And I think that the reasons that you want to go ahead with this program, it's already been voted in. You've got your minds made up. I'm sure your hearts are in the right place. But the retirees, between the inflation, the food prices, the gas, our retirement funds, it's never going to end until we get some changes done. So I would just want to say, lower the rate. Don't even keep it the same. We're getting killed and killed and killed. I don't even want to look at my retirement account anymore. It's so low. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Our next public comment, Mona Hamilton.
Ms. Hamilton, you are recognized.
Good afternoon. My name is Mona Hamilton. A recent New York Times article states, currently we have the highest inflation level in 40 years and it is still rising. As the price keeps rising on almost all of our goods and services, and as you will collect more tax dollars, given an increase in property values, as they've both said, I'm here today to request the millage rate remain at the same level as last year. Thank you very much for this time today.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here and for sharing your thoughts with us.
Our next public comment, Sharon Mears.
Ms. Mears, you are recognized.
Thank you very much. Driving over here, I had the radio on, and the Dow is now down another 825 points. That is a reflection of the overall economic situation in our country. We're a microcosm here in Tallahassee, here in Leon County. And those people who depend on those kinds of 401ks, IRAs, those things are in for a rude awakening in the near future and possibly even longer. The inflation rate is 8.6%, probably will continue to go higher. This is not the time to do anything to put more on the backs of property tax paying people. So I strongly urge you to keep the millage rate at what it is, to do what you can do with it or lower it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here today and sharing your thoughts.
Our next public comment, Neil Skeen.
Mr. Skeen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm Neil Skeen, as all of you unfortunately know. Just a few comments. One is that I came in a little troubled about this, I called it the lots of boxes in the first draft of the needs analysis. Dr. Williams and I have talked about this, and I left the last 2 hours with really a great feeling about what, first of all, QQ has put together and what you all have put together, what you, Dr. Glenn, have overseen as the chair of that. I think particularly the system focus that you all talked about, navigators to help families deal with the complexity of dealing with the poverty as well as all of the other issues in their lives will be very important. Early childhood is clearly on everyone's mind, but I appreciate also the focus on the parents of those children, because you can't help the children without helping their parents, or without creating in the parents before their parents the capacity to be better parents. In my 9 years associated with PACE Center for Girls, we like to say that PACE girls are the mothers of the next generation. And if you build in them the capacity to be good parents, to be successful, to have a good outlook on life, that will have an effect, not just for the next generation, but for generations to come. The one other thing, in all of the stuff about school shootings, school massacres, we've talked some about adverse childhood experiences, which we've also talked about here. The important thing also, there's more science on positive childhood experiences as the things that build resilience in children, to give them the capacity to confront whatever adversity comes in their lives then or later. And I think looking for what is positive about children is going to be very important in carrying forward these programs. I want to end, given the last few comments, with a mention of the budget and the millage rate. And Paul knows where I'm going with this. But everybody compromised last year on the 3/8 rate because you didn't have a plan in place. You didn't really know what you were going to do with the money. Now you've got this. There has been nothing more encouraging in the last 6 months than this last workshop. You do know what you're doing. You do have a recognition that there is far more need than there is money, even at $5.50 And so I think your vote on the millage should demonstrate that you know what you're doing. You do have your arms around this problem. You do have a plan, or will have one by October 1st. It's not your job to supersede what the voters asked you to do and the job they handed you. Your job is to spend it well and effectively, and I think you're doing that. My CSC tax last year, I think, was $52. If it were the full rate, I would have spent $18 more. Well, I just spent $18 buying lunch for Jack because it was my turn. So give this to the children. Use this for the purpose that you're here for, and have the money to do the things that you're all planning to do and you all see the need for doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Next public comment, Whitfield Leland.
Mr. Leland, you are recognized, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon. First, let me say thank you all for the work that y'all doing. Trust me, I know it ain't easy. I also have to say that this first funding cycle, it didn't look, from a public standpoint, it didn't look good. A lot of people within our circles of the nonprofits and some of the local organizations, it looked like it was a process, but then it was like it was no process. It's kind of like the same thing that we kind of figured was going to happen from the jump. And one of the things that really concerns me is that after, making phone calls and asking about grant processes throughout the city, normally grants are not scored. So that was a kind of uncommon practice that maybe some individuals wasn't used to, that, actually prepare or seek the funding and miss that mark. Also, it kind of concerns a lot of us of the micromanagement of the board, in a sense. I think that when we hired Mrs. Green as executive director, and to go out in the community and do her job and bring things back to the board, when it come down to the board deciding who get funding, I think that's like, I mean, even in the city, when they give out CPHS funding, it's a group of people say who gets the funding, and it goes before the board, and it's either yes or no. Not, well, this person scored this, and it's really no discussion after it comes from the head. So I think we need to make it clear how we're going to make the process when it comes down to funding organizations and programs. And I will tell y'all this. I think I heard Dr. Glenn said, it's certain services that's already in the community that people don't go to, but the reason why they don't go to is because either they take forever to get the service, or when they get there, they're understaffed to get it. So not that it's not working, but we have to also think about funding, not necessarily for programming, but for these services to have staff members to get to the community, because that's where we're really lacking at. It's really not the services of the program. It's the people that actually is there to make sure that these services get to the community. So if we could just pay attention to that, I'm with everybody else. If y'all not gonna drop it, don't raise it, the millage raise. Y'all have a blessed day, and thank you all.
Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate you.
And the last public comment at this time, Ms. Rita Brown.
Ms. Brown, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure, my pleasure. I've always been a supporter of the CSC coming to Leon County, because at the end of the day, helping the least among us is going to be the key. I heard several comments today. I don't know if everybody saw, I'm a head shaker. And I was there shaking my head. And Judge, you said something. You said that you saw a person who had a great idea, but maybe didn't dot the I's and cross the T's on how to get the numbers straight. And I think if there's anything that this council will have to do better in the future, is to be able to decipher what actually is important. I know that rules are made and things, and I know things are flexed, but it's disheartening when you know that you do have something that actually could work. Even things that are tried and true. I own the Brownsville Preparatory Institute here in Tallahassee, and I do want to do a shout out to the fact that I just got our standardized scores back, and I'm in Frenchtown, and every one of those children was at least a half a grade to a grade higher than the age they were. That's because of the work, okay? And I'm also want to say that you talked about where to help, and that working with the young children was the place to be. And yes, we should help everybody. But if we want the bang for the buck, you were the bang for the buck guy. And you're absolutely right. I'm a taxpayer. I live in the Buck Lake area, and Lord knows I don't want my taxes to go up, but I'm also from New York, and I'm grateful that my taxes are what they are. So I came to Florida because I was trying to avoid $13,000 a year almost 20 years ago. So, I get it. But as we go forward, it's going to be real important, not just to get the funding out there, but to also make sure that we have the data to support that the work we're giving this money for is actually real. Because if it's not real as a taxpayer, I don't want to fund it. I don't want to fund it. The work you all are doing is great. I thought about applying for the board, but I said, no, I like to do the work. So I don't want to be where you are doing all the work you're doing. I want to be out there in the programming side, making sure that implementation of great ideas is actually happening. So as we go forward, I thank you for the work that you're doing as well, because this is no tiny task, and the eyes are on you. And as those eyes continue to stay on you, I'm looking for you all to be able to get better at things you've never done before. And we have to remember that part as well. It's easy to say what you didn't do, but if you've never done it before, you've got to get to it. I'm glad that you all are doing the work to look at other people who have been doing it and get the model set to make that happen. And I'm looking forward to this next part of it really being something that is mindful. I don't want the taxes to raise anymore. I want us to learn how to work with what we have. And we have it. It's been put in our laps. Let's do great things with it. Thank you so much.
Any other public comments, Ms. Clay?
No more public comments at this time. Your
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Brings us to item 5, approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes from the May 22 meeting and the financial report also from May of 2022. This is our first ever consent agenda that we've ever had. So I don't really know how to do a consent agenda. I'm going to suggest is maybe there's a move the consent, but the consent agenda was your idea. So I think you know how to do it. What do we do, Mr. Jones? A consent's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Mitchell. Any discussion of the consent agenda? Any objection to the consent agenda? We'll show the consent agenda is passed. Mr. Jones, I want to commend you on your innovation of the consent agenda. Thank you, sir. Brings us to the executive director's report. Ms. Green, you are recognized.
Yes, thank you, Chair Shostrom, and thank you, Council Member Jones as well. Moving forward, the Executive Director's report most likely will be on the consent agenda, but there were just a few things I wanted to bring to the Council's attention. So next slide. As was stated in public comment, we did finish the summer community investment, and you will see on this slide the summary of that investment. We have all of those contracts signed and are finishing up disbursement of almost $1.6 million. We anticipate to serve 13,000 children, youth, and families this summer. So that would be beginning June 1st and going through August 30th. So thank you for your diligence. I know it wasn't easy. Just to break down the funding for the priority areas, success in school and life, 824 and change, healthy children, youth, and families, 211,000 and change, and then stable and nurturing families and community, 529,000 and change. Within that, we were able to fund some mental health services, which came up during the workshop. We did summer learning opportunities, transportation barriers, data collection, enhanced hands-on learning, workforce readiness skills, creative spaces for career exploration, access to mental health, as I said, and then better educating the community on societal needs, including recognizing and responding to the signs of human trafficking situations. So we covered a lot. And that being said, I look forward to us moving into hopefully a strategic planning space to determine our priority funding and how we do continuous funding to ensure we're filling those gaps. Next slide. As you know, the council participated in the Breaking Bread Together neighborhood dinners. There were 9 total that covered 10 neighborhoods. My gosh, the information gleaned was absolutely awesome. And I will tell you, reiterated and reaffirmed what was uncovered in the needs assessment. The county will be presenting to Leon County government the results of that work and an action plan. And we look forward to continuing to partner with them as we try to address the food insecurity issue in our county. And then lastly, wanted to let you know that I am in the final stages of interviewing for an additional team member. So hopefully we will have someone joining us here in the very near future. And that is the ED's report.
Outstanding. Any questions for Ms. Green? Mr. Jones, you are recognized.
I enjoyed the opportunity of attending the Breaking Bread conversations. And I have to tell you, I agree with Ms. Green to pull those off on the heels of what had already been our community conversations. What we have been able to do with her leadership is really make the work, the value of this Children's Service Council very conspicuous in our community. the conversations that we witnessed there, the variety of persons as we saw in our first conversations that we were a part of, and then the breaking bread conversations has helped, I believe, to amplify what we know is the noble intent of our work. And as we continue to engage with our public, we both give and we both receive, and we will see the response ultimately in our path moving forward. But it is unlike anything that I have witnessed in my 30 years in terms of organizations who have been responsible or tasked with meeting the needs of our children populations. And I just had to pause and say thank you and acknowledge the great ingenuity in what we're making the main thing, the main thing. One of the things that Mr. Mitchell has constantly reminded us of from the very beginning was that these are taxpayer dollars. We all have said it, heard it ad nauseum, but the conversations with taxpayers directly to talk about impact for what we know is our shared constituency of children, 0 to 24, Ms. McFadden, I think has just been invaluable. And I'm just grateful that we've all been a part of that and been able to witness it. So kudos.
Yeah, I have just one question. So we've got the $1.6 million out in the community, serving a good array of needs. How are we as a council going to have it reported back to us, the success or, needs room for, or plenty of room for improvement? What kind of an assessment are we getting back, post these 2 months of the funding being out there?
Sure. So as you know, we did a funding upfront model. So we did disperse the entire amount for which the organizations were approved. Each month, they will provide a monthly report to ensure that what they said they were going to do in line with our KOMs, which, not to use the acronym, let me go back. In line with our key outcome measures, they will do that on a monthly basis. And then at the end, there will be a final report so that we can see the full impact of that funding and ensure that it is in line with the key outcome measures that they said the program would address. We will be having a meeting with all of our recipients this coming week to go through the reporting format, make sure they are understanding, and also make sure that they are able to comply with that reporting. If not, we're able to go in and do that capacity building. So their final reports are due by September 15th. Funding ends on August 30th, but effectively school starts 2 weeks before that. So we believe most of those programs will end in mid-August. They have a full 4 weeks to get their reporting in. 4 whole weeks, yes. But remember, they're doing monthly reporting.
You all did the procurement in about that amount of time. They can do their reports.
21 days, yes. And so they will get those reports in, and we should have a report back to the council at the October meeting.
Judge, one.
Yes, please, Mr. Mitchell.
Has there been any consideration given to the, I think it's at 13,000 or 16,000 lives that we're going to touch with this money, which is really incredible under a short period of time that we had to do it. But has there been any consideration given to doing a direct evaluation from the users of the program?
So in the session we will have with them next week, we are asking, and I want to say requiring, it's a soft requirement, but a requirement to get input and evaluation from the participants, as well as testimonials and photographs and footage so that we can begin to archive the work that we are doing and can show that in the final reporting.
So are we as a council though doing, I mean, I was like, look, if you gave me $100,000, I'm going to come back with all kinds of wonderful glowing testimonials. All right. And I'm gonna hand out the evaluations to sort of like professors. I always just like, well, do I really tell them what I think of their teaching ability? Are we as a council, is there a sort of a randomness that we can reach out to any of these 13,000 participants in these programs that we're funding, that we could say to them, tell us about the program. What was good? What wasn't? Where is there room for improvement? What would you like to see more of? That kind of thing.
So do we have a staffing piece that goes into that will go to every one of these programs? That is a no, because there's only two of us
Right.
and a piece. That being said, we are getting an additional staff person, and we will see about kind of divvying that up. We did not build in that type of formal evaluation into this RFA.
Right.
That being said, as we contemplate priority funding, it is absolutely going to be a piece of that. I do always like to remind that this was trying to fill those gaps. That being said, we are going to go out and visit all of those programs and talk with the participants and get that input so that we know firsthand. But yes, we are putting that in the hands of the partners. I don't like to say grantees, but partners to help us galvanize and get that information. But your point is well taken, and absolutely, we will do that.
Thank you.
Judge, can I-
Yes, Dr. Glenn.
Mr. Mitchell, that came up at our last program services committee meeting. And I do really like the idea of getting feedback from the people that participated in the program, because that really lets me know the impact of the program on the individuals. As Ms. Green indicated, the comment was made, we did not make that a requirement, but it's going to be in the requirements next time, because I completely agree. We need that feedback coming back to us. I just wanted to amplify that.
Outstanding. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the executive director? Excellent. Seeing none. That brings us to the general counsel update. Mr. Rowe, you are recognized. Update us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly wanted to say.
Hang on, let me turn my.
Very good. Each board member should have received earlier this year a notification from either the Florida Commission on Ethics or the Supervisor of Elections regarding the annual form that must be filed in the way of.
Maybe it's
Better. Thank you. Earlier this year, each board member should have received a notice from either the Florida Commission on Ethics or the Supervisor of Elections regarding the annual filing that must take place. It's basically a financial disclosure form that's applicable to each board member. It's done on a form promulgated by the Commission on Ethics, depending on whether or not the board member has service on another board, Commissioner Cummings, Councilmember Jones, the judge. You may have to file, I think it's referred to as Form 6. Everyone else files Form 1. I've never had to file the form as general counsel, but I've taken a look at it. It's relatively straightforward. It's self-explanatory. It includes directions. I've got copies of the form if you should need it. It's my understanding that this year you have to file a hard copy of it. Normally you can do it electronically, but that is due by July 1st. So I wanted to remind the board members that you have to get that in. There is a grace period, and you have actually until September 1st to get it done. After that point, I understand they start to impose fines. So important to get it done. Again, if you have any questions about it or need either form, I'd be glad to send it to you.
Any questions for the general counsel?
That form, once completed, will apply for all of your responsibilities, right?
I believe that's true. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. Thank you so much, Mr. Rowe. Appreciate you as always. Committees and reports. We're on item 8A of the agenda, the Program Services Committee. Dr. Glenn, you are recognized for your report.
So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So the Program Services Committee did host a workshop this afternoon, and thanks to all of you that were able to attend. Ms. McPhail was gracious enough to capture a lot of the feedback as a result of the conversation that we had. Ms. McPhail, I'm going to ask you to read it so I don't have to squint, if you don't mind, and just reminding everybody of some of the major highlights that came out as a result of that conversation.
Well, I can certainly read it and attempt to remind folks, but I would ask that Ms. Green jump in and kind of going through it. But I tried to, as folks were commenting and you did the round robin at the end, Chair Sostrom, kind of documenting it that way. And then as people repeated things, moving them up or down. So I attempted a prioritization, but by all means, this is definitely open for reflection. So early childhood, so these are the issues that generated a lot of discussion. Early childhood education, so long as they're not funded by other sources. Mental health services, not only for youth, but was also mentioned for parents, especially young parents. Discussions about evidence-based practices as it relates to crime mitigation amongst youth. The issue of access to prenatal care and the role of Healthy Start and possible collaboration with them and learning about the collaborative that they're already leading. Parent education. I at first had this paired with early education, but I think it came up with a couple of folks. So I broke it out as its own thing, but that's why I said especially to early learning, as well as parent supports. Making sure that those supports are available for older youth and parents. I guess that's what happens when you go fast. You have a little bit of repeat. Sorry about that. And then this concept of the system of care approach to support collaboratives and tear down silos, and capacity building for providers, especially around data collection and measuring impact. And then you talked a lot about what kind of needs to be done. This is not in any type of priority order, I don't think. Did you want to?
No, please, please.
So just kind of a recap, to basically develop a strategic plan that aligns with the findings from the needs assessment to help prioritize long-term funding while still allowing for short-term funding opportunities. To conduct a fiscal analysis of federal and state flow of money and how it's being used to ensure we're not supplanting our investments. This came up near the end, creating a collaborative around local funders so that we're working in tandem and partnership. Invest in capacity building and system level changes. Again, the collective impact model. So a little bit of crossover between those issues. I put maybe weight on early learning funding to allow for what Ms. Smeltzer was talking about related to the ESSER and ARPA dollars to fill the gaps. But when you do invest, to consider helping families overcome the fiscal cliff and support early learning programs to become high quality. Like, what does that mean? I think that those are the pieces that aren't currently being funded by the ESSER and ARPA dollars. But still, I think the fiscal analysis that happening maybe before that. Definite need for community navigators or partnering with organizations who are dedicated to resource and referral and determine how to better reach and engage the families most in need. And then I'll turn it back to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so very much for capturing a lot of that. And a lot of this conversation was based on, of course, the needs assessment that Dr. Williams shared with us. Judge, I don't think this is anything we need to vote on, but one thing that I would like to ask the staff to do is that we have them walk us through a strategic planning session at our next meeting, which will be in July. And then I think that will help inform a strategic plan that the council would like for us to implement as a result of the needs assessment that we have completed.
So I think it makes sense to put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Sounds good. Yes, sir.
Is that acceptable, Ms. Green? All right. Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Glenn, if we talk about having a strategic plan, I think we need to be clear about its purpose and focus. Most specifically, if it's intended to provide guidance entirely on the funding cycle or the funding measurement. This is my first time hearing a strategic plan, and I just want to know that we're clear about what we're going to be strategically planning.
Okay, so thank you very much. So I know you weren't able to attend the workshop, but during the workshop session that we had from 1 to 3 today, we talked about how, especially when we saw the examples from a lot of the other CSCs, how they worked to execute the priority areas or the funding for the priority areas. So what a lot of them did was they mapped out a strategic plan, a long-term plan for their priority areas, and then short-term plans for their priority areas. So that was something that we wanted to adopt as we look at how we want to approach or address these priority areas and how we wanted to fund them, what types of funding cycles. We wanted to have a workshop where we looked at the areas that we thought were priorities, and then what's the strategic plan that we're going to map out to be it. Because one thing that Dr. Williams said, a lot of the fixes is like a 5-year plan. It took 5 years to really implement an impactful program. So we wanted a plan that gave us a vision as to where we were going to approach the gaps and needs that we saw as a result of our needs assessment.
So that strategic plan would be mapped over the course of 5 years?
Not necessarily. So we didn't define what the length of time would be. And I think that's what we will have to decide during that working session that we have. What will the time frame be? What will our approach be? But we want to get the knowledge and the expertise of our board members to sit down and think, how do we want to approach this? How are we going to strategically address it? And then we'll have to make some decisions about timeline then.
Thank you.
And if I might,
Please.
Dr. Glenn, we will have a very focused agenda so that it is very clear the pieces of that strategic planning session, deciding on what those priorities are, what kind of length we want to put on that, and then how we want that cycle to look. So we will be providing the PowerPoint from earlier to all council members. In fact, it'll be on the website so that everyone can see it, which I think will help to make it all kind of come together.
Thank you so much. Any other comments on the, did you finish your report?
I am done.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, you guys are so tolerant of my leadership, such as it is. So that then, do we have public comment on the Program Services Committee?
We do have one public comment, Jack Levine.
Mr. Levine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I admire each of you for your individual and collective achievements. I'll tell you, I learned a lot in the last 4 hours that I could not have gleaned from just reading documents alone. Hearing your passion, hearing your persuasion moved me to this microphone this afternoon. As part of your strategic planning discussion of next month, I'd like to bring forward an idea that was really hatched about a year ago at a Children's Summit meeting here in Tallahassee, which brought us to a call to action for wanting to initiate a very far-ranging strategy called Hours for Leon. And that's with an H and without an H. And that is an initiative for assessing and empowering a new level of time philanthropy, which some people call volunteerism, Mr. Superintendent, time philanthropy on behalf of the children of our community. Bottom line is we believe there are two kinds of currency. There is dollar currency, Mr. Treasurer, you know about that. And then there's time currency. And time currency and dollar currency can be merged into a powerful systemic approach to what our children need, because just like in the early learning arena, learning comes from relationships. Learning comes from mentorship. Learning comes from trust. And that trust does not have to be only within the confines of a family. It could be the family of a community. And we would be far and away the furthest thinking and furthest actioning of all of our sister and brother councils if we do this. Now, you would ask if we had more time, what do we mean by this? And the answer is it's in development. We have approached the Jim Moran Institute for Entrepreneurship to help us out. And they are thinking through ways that this can be an entrepreneurial adventure. But also we're thinking of ways that we are bringing the generations together, because we know that there are some teenagers who give heartily to their time and effort in the community. And there are my fellow seniors who do the same. So we want to make this an intergenerational venture on behalf of children and families. So all I want to say in my limited time is stay tuned for our conversation in July. That's an appetizer for something that we hope will be a main dish. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Levine. Ms. Clay, any other comments?
There are no more public comments, Your Honor.
Very well. Very well. Thank you so much. Brings us to the Finance and Budget Committee. Mr. Mitchell, Treasurer Mitchell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Judge. Members of the council, the Budget Committee met a couple weeks ago at actually at my office, and there were a couple members of the public that were there, and we talked about sort of the process for setting the millage rate. You'll remember last year we went through this, and we were also very new, and each one of us took the time to listen to the riveting Department of Revenues, and that is not meant as a slight to the Department of Revenue, but it is meant as a point that someone like me has a hard time staying awake with very dry information. And that is very dry information. Nonetheless, live and learn, and we've learned, and I think this go around, we'll understand the process by which the board will set a millage rate. We'll obviously take a lot of public comment, and today was just the beginning of that. And if last year is any indication, there will be plenty more public comment. The important thing to recognize is in the conversations with the Department of Revenue, as well as the Leon County Property Appraiser's Office, and the point was made by members of the public commenting today. The overall value of accessible property within Leon County has gone up, and that's a good thing if you're a property owner. At least it's the one investment these days that actually went up. So the comments that if we leave the millage rate exactly as it is, we will generate more dollars this year than we did last year. I've thought long and hard about this constant debate that's in sort of the public as to whether that's raising taxes or not raising taxes. Really, I don't think that's, for me, we're raising revenue. That's really what this is about. So if what we've brought forward as a committee is just to help you begin consideration. These are not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. These are numbers that we put together that said, if we were to leave the millage rate exactly as this body set it last year, how much money would we bring in? A little more than last year. If we wanted to bring in exactly, actually, Holly, you got very close, within $1,000 of what we brought in last year, what would the millage rate be? And you can follow the rest of the math on your own. The important thing is the process. You can begin to contemplate what you as an individual feels is the right number. Again, it was our job to bring the numbers, the impact of whatever you want to vote for to you to see, hey, we had X amount of money this year, wasn't enough. Do we, as we are forecasting a budget for a whole year out, is that enough? Or do we need more for the programs that we're contemplating? So that's what we've done. That's what we've brought forward. It is, as you can see, there's a nice discussion and hearing schedule. I would love it if as a council and everybody would kind of just maybe throw out on the table where their heart is, where their head is on this issue, because the committee has a job to do, and that's to bring forward a recommendation. And each one of us comes from a different perspective, and each one of us has changed that perspective over time. I would love to know what the other members of the council feel. So that's why we gave you the heads up of this chart of what money would be generated. If you would like to see other numbers, now would be a good time to let us know, and we'll bring it back before anyone has to cast a public vote on it. But it would be real helpful if we could hear from the other 9 members of the council of what your thoughts are.
Mr. Treasurer.
Before we do that, I just want to say I will not be participating in this discussion based on the statutory limitations on the judgment.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Exactly. And if I can add one more bit of information, Mr. Mitchell and Ms. McPhail and I did have a chance to meet with a representative of the Property Appraiser's Office to discuss what this number meant if we kept it at the same millage rate that we currently have. She told us that property values are coming in at about 9.5% more than last year. I did have a chance to meet with my other colleagues, and that number is going anywhere from 9.5 all the way up to 11.5, depending on what part of the state you are in. And so I feel it judicious to also say that there are some councils, I would say larger councils with larger money coming in, that are rolling their rate back so that they end up with the same very close amount of revenue that they brought in this year. And then the others are pretty much staying the same. And so they're keeping that millage rate the same, and then realizing that that additional revenue that way. So I do think that that would be prudent just for me to offer.
Good point. And by the way, for those of you who are served by the property appraiser's office, they really were fantastic in terms of just really smart, informative. Didn't matter what kind of crazy question I asked. She had and I had some crazy questions. The lady had the answer immediately. Just really very, very competent people who are handling the way that our property is appraised. So and I don't know, I'll follow Judge Sjöström's process from how we ended the workshop, and maybe go from, well, no, you know what? This time, Terrence, I'm going to put you on the clock first. I'm going to go from right to left, because that's, as a registered Republican, what I would do is go right to left. So could you tell me your thoughts?
Yeah, well, before hearing. Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I had asked for the attention of the judge, and then Ms. Green provided clarification.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Jones.
Birthday twin. Can't forget your birthday twin. The reason what I wanted to bring to, I guess for me, one of the things that I thought about as a person who ultimately embraced the children's services concept and the millage rate, for me, most simply, I looked at it from what that meant to me as a taxpayer based upon the rate, the application of that millage rate. One of the things I thought was very critical about Mr. Keene's, correct, comments when he talked about what those impacts were to him. As we come to some decision on what choice we will make, whether it's to keep it the same or roll it back, we'll also have to manage the narrative that we share with the taxpayers in terms of most clearly what is the impact. It's like buying a car. The sticker price is immaterial to me. What is my monthly payment for the car? It makes my decision. Well, I think as we talk about making decisions regarding the millage rate, I think people will want to know what are the intended impacts. Many of us will recall, as a part of the narrative for framing the acceptance of this, we broke it down. We took it out of these decimals, and we talked about per $100,000 of housing value. What did the application of those millage rates meant? And so when we hear the hyperbolated conversation of feast and famine based upon this millage rate, I think it's also critical for us to manage the narrative now that we are in place to communicate to our voters, what does this mean to you individually? And if this, at a present rate, per 100,000, I think needs to be a part of that conversation. And it would help to bring clarity for me in terms of what those impacts would be on the ordinary citizen. If we're looking at, I was able to do the math for a home here in Tallahassee valued at $200,000 to $1 million. And there was that information that was out there when we were getting the community to make this decision. And it would help me to come to some clarity if I knew about that same type of clarifying impact of the decision that we would make. And that's, although not entirely expressed here, I think it would help me to be conscientious about the impacts on my neighbor.
And don't ask me on each each one of the potential millage rates, but I can tell you that the math is easy on the 0.5 mil because it's, you know, my brain can actually handle that. But if you and at the 0.375 that we're currently at, you had mentioned a $200,000 house, that would be $75. $1 million is 75 times 5, so that would be 350. That'd be $375. So those are real numbers, but you simply just it is whatever the millage rate is. Take that as a dollar amount. So if it's 0.375, move your decimal point over 2 or per $100,000 of value. So for where we are right now, $100,000 home is $37.50. So a $200,000 home is $75,000. I mean $75. Yes.
Thank you. And again, and see, in most, as simple as that explanation is, I think that translation means a great deal for coverage in terms of whatever decision we would make, because here we now talk directly. And then when you then take that and then frame a narrative about the return on investment per family or per property owner, I think that also goes along.
All right. So as chair of the committee, I'm gonna start on my right, and Mr. Watts, if you would.
Yeah. So even before I'm here in Executive Green, I was more inclined to roll it back to item B, and my reasoning for that was I think we should use what we currently have as an opportunity to prove that the decisions we are making currently with this current funding that we're going to be doing, let us prove that, you know, the decisions we make are going to be impactful, effective, and then for the next time, be able to use that to, if we feel like we need to advocate that we do possibly need to raise it because we were so successful with the decisions we made and the current money that we had. That's where I'm at. So that's my opinion.
I recently had to answer that question to someone that asked me, how does it affect me? So I kind of had a picture in my mind, and I was prepared to say that I prefer that we keep it where it is at this point. But I wouldn't be opposed to rolling it back for the very reason that you shared.
Commissioner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Without a lot of elaboration, I would be inclined to maintain the millage where it is. You know, due to inflation, I think we have to be concerned about our taxpayers and our citizens, but we want to also provide quality services for our children. And in the sense that, you know, we've just only let services for the summer. I think we need a little time to prove that we as a council are providing quality services that's moving the needle for our children. So that would be my position, maintain where it is.
And Dr. Glenn?
My current vote is to leave the millage rate where it is.
Thank you, Superintendent.
So I appreciate comments made by Mr. Skeen, and we kind of did some arm wrestling last year on this issue that I'd rather not do this year. And I think given the financial condition of our country, instability, that I would be inclined to leave the rate where it is. And it does give me some comfort, though, knowing that of the little over $6 million, I guess we haven't taken the 1.5 out yet, which would leave us $4.5 million that we're rolling forward to add to the 7.6 really gets us back to 0.5 or more moving into this year. And then I think a lot of it too is, you know, we worry about how we're perceived in the community. And I just think now is the wrong time to move forward with an increase, although I certainly respect and understand Mr. Skeen's position as well, but I would be inclined to leave it where it is. Ms. McFadden?
I would also recommend we keep it where it is. My recommendation was the perception going the other way. If you roll it back, then people may question that you're not sure of what you're doing and that you don't have a plan. And so it would, I think, create a narrative that is not true, but would be out there. So I would recommend leaving it where it is.
I would recommend that we leave it where it is. In lieu of all that we have discovered with our needs assessment, I can't imagine that we would not want to. And then with the projected increase compared to what we anticipated to what we now will realize, better equips us to meet the needs as outlined through this need assessment that we have patiently waited on and participated in.
So that I think I heard everybody correctly. There's sort of two things that are being tossed about. I just want to make sure that the terminology is the same. The millage rate being the same would mean that we would generate more money. Okay, so I'm getting a yes and a shake of the head versus keeping the amount of money we brought in last year the same. Okay, all right. Well, I will throw this out as just kind of one person. Mr. Skeen's point is a good point, and that is when you take one item and you don't put it really in context, and you say, hey, it means it's $18 more a year for Mr. Skeen, and that's what he spent on Mr. Levine's lunch. Well, $18. I mean, surely people can come up with $18 if you own a home, but in context of what people are going through. And something I feel pretty lucky in life that $18 is not something I'm worried about at the end of any month or at the end of any year. Joel, if you're missing this by driving around this community, there are people that are really hurting, and I'm worried about those people, and I don't worry about whether $18 is going to put them over the edge or not. But it's not just this $18. It's $18 with the county commission voting on a millage rate. It's the school board voting on a millage rate. It's filling up their gas tanks. It's providing food for their families. Everybody will have plenty of time to think about this, but I would strongly encourage us to think about bringing in the same amount of money as we did last year. And I'm going to tell you this, I was the guy that was, all about 0.25 last year. And the superintendent, I complimented him earlier. I'm going to really compliment him on this. He was right. I'm glad we went to 3.375. I really am. I originally voted that way because I wanted this. I wanted to be a guy that could get along, even if I didn't necessarily see it the same way. But I'm glad I did that because I think the superintendent was right. I don't think I'm wrong in this case. I think that the amount of money that we've put aside in our reserves, the amount of money that we still have in the bank that we have not spent is sufficient. And I really kind of anticipated sitting here today, if I was here a year ago, thinking I was going to vote for the full 0.5. But the world looks very different. And I think we need to be nimble. So I appreciate everybody's comments, and those are my comments. And the Budget Committee will meet again 2 weeks from now, and we'll bring back a recommendation. But by doing this exercise, everybody has a little more time to think.
And it also tells the community, this is where everybody is. So, fire away. You'll find us at the local grocery store with a little less in our carts, but you'll find us there. So thank you. Thank you, Judge.
So Ms. Green, maybe just for my own comfort, we can let Mr. Mitchell finish out item B and take the public comment and deal with the trim hearing schedule as well. Is that acceptable to you, Paul?
So we could go on to public comment and then come back and just do a motion to accept the schedule. Yes.
So you're on.
Yeah. Well,
You're on this right there.
Do we have any
public?
the public comment. Oh, so I'm chairing
You're
this
running,
because
you're
hush
running
up,
as
you.
part of the meeting.
Hush up, I got this. I feel like Al Haig. I'm in control here. Jacinta, is there public comment on the millage rate?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank goodness.
So
My work here is finished, sir.
So wait, I have a question. If it, is there anything that prohibits us from doing this now? Or do we have to stick to the
Yeah.
timeline?
Yes, we need
Yeah.
to stick to the timeline.
Okay, and I'd like to, because I appreciated, Ms. McFadden, will you elaborate a little bit more on what you perceive the message we send by reducing the millage rate?
I think it goes back to the conversation we had last year where we were so fluid, right? We didn't know where we were going to go. And so I think by sticking our guns and saying, this is where we are, this is what we think you can control. I think we open up another dialogue if we do push it backwards, that is going to be out front again in front of us with people swirling it or bringing it back to us in different ways than maybe what we, and I do think just kind of keeping it straight and narrow, people get used to it and are more comfortable with it. And I'm not saying this, but I think, Paul, to your point earlier about looking at it from the long term, I estimate that if the prices are raising this quickly, we've all been through this, they're going to fall in a couple of years. We better be prepared for that. And so I'd like to think of it more long-term, like we may be putting this out there. This might, although it's a vote for today, if we're in this, what we went through before in Florida probably goes through it more than any other state in the nation. We go through these ups and downs on our housing, and you guys have probably dealt with it more through school board millage rates and so forth. I think we want to be really careful of adjusting too much. It's sort of like when you do investment work, right? And you say, oh gosh, we're going to do a 60-40 portfolio. And then stocks start doing really bad. And, it's just sort of in your second nature to change, but you shouldn't. Because long-term, it's all going to average out. And so I think if we take it to an eye of the long-term, yeah, there's a little bit, but honestly, the dollars there were not very much of a difference overall. So I think I would say I'm doing it from a perception issue that if we go through that all the time, we keep changing. I'd rather look at it like an investment portfolio and say, if this is where I think I can live, then let's try to stay within that unless there's something that happens later.
And go ahead.
I'm
No, and I'm just, I agree with her philosophy. I certainly appreciate Mr. Mitchell's line of thinking, but philosophically, I agree with Ms. McFadden. I would be inclined to leave it where it is as opposed to lowering it.
And
So-
Mr. Mitchell, if
so
I can
the-
add.
Go ahead.
Let me add one more thing. For the CSCs that are rolling back, they are some of our more seasoned CSCs that bring in double, almost triple figure. So they are the ones that are considering a rollback rate so that they're bringing in the money that they brought in last year versus our smaller CSCs that are more our size are really looking to leave that millage rate the same. That being said, we can take, I kind of did a straw poll A and B because, and look at what a budget would look like for both of those. That wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities so that can be compared.
I don't
apples
think, look, it's, again, I was here 1 year ago. I know how to count 9 to 1, or pardon me, 8 to 1. So that, but by the way, this to me is such an insignificant amount of money. It's really just more of a perception thing. And I'm good. I think, Ms. McFadden makes some very good points, and I'm good either way. So I really wanted to throw sort of a counter a point out there, just so it was thrown out there for anybody to consider. Having said that, now there's no public comment, as Jacinta has indicated. The judge, you know what? I would like to get a motion on the what do I want a motion on? Oh, the consideration of. Why are we approving the schedule? Isn't that already determined? Do we need a vote on?
Well, because those last two hearings in particularly have to be
Oh, they're
publicly
us.
noticed,
Yes.
those
Okay.
trim hearings.
So can I get a motion from, thank you, Mr. Jones, get me out of this. Thank you, Mr. Watts. I have a motion and a second without objection, but conversation, yes.
Approving? I'm not sure what.
The schedule.
Oh, the schedule.
trim
Okay.
schedule,
All right, thank you.
our hearing schedule, when we're going to hear from the public. Very good.
Page
So I have a
13,
motion.
page 13 of the agenda.
A motion and a second without objection and no further conversation. Very good. It's approved.
Excellent. Bringing us to the nominating committee.
Thank you,
Give me back
Judge.
the teleprompter. Bring us to the nominating committee. The nominating committee met, and we have nominated recommendations and made recommendations for the chair and the vice chair effective July 1st of 2022. We did receive
I
nominations.
move acceptance of the recommendations.
Moved
Second.
and seconded. Do we know who the recommendations are? You guys know that already. All right, excellent. Any
Commissioner Cummings.
Commissioner Cummings? Public comment on the new chair and vice chair.
There's no public comment, Your Honor.
Excellent. So we'll take it to a vote. Any objections, discussions? Seeing none, we have a new chair and vice chair. Congratulations, Dr. Glenn and Terrence Watts. Outstanding. Bringing us to next meetings day. We have a Finance and Budget Committee meeting Thursday, June 30th. I will not be there. I will tell you that right now. I will be out of the Governing Council meeting. Next meeting is Thursday, July 21st at 2 p.m. in the Leon County Commission chambers, not the Tallahassee Community College, July 21st. And then the next meeting agenda, I know we're going to talk about the strategic plan. We will have some trim thing to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll have budget, we'll have trim, we will do, those will be the two
Major
things, yes.
All right.
Then we will go into strategic planning. I'd like to bring to the board's attention those dates with asterisks. July 30, August 4th, August 4th. Please, 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 if you are on those committees, look at your schedule and let's try to make sure we can know what's going on, and Jacinta will get with you. The 30th in particular, Councilmember McFadden, we originally were looking at the 28th. I know you were not going to be in town, so we will get with you. We'd like as many of our council members as possible. Yes.
I will not be available July 30th.
On the 30th either. Okay, so we may have to look at another date. So we will get with you on that. Yes. So it's the community, it's taking the needs assessment out into the community after your strategic planning to kind of go through that with providers and community members. So a Saturday may actually be the date to get as many.
Would that be a workshop so you don't need a quorum maybe?
Yeah, it would be more of a workshop, no voting. We publicly notice it, but no voting.
What is not up there though, which we adopted, is the trim public
Trim
hearing.
hearings.
And that's September 8th and 22nd. So to the best of your ability, we definitely need.
We
a quorum
definitely.
there. And to the best of your ability to be at those two, September
Yes.
8th and September 22nd. That would be phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So the Finance and Budget Committee meeting, is that back at your office? All right, and can we, on Outlook, can we send all that
Absolutely.
for us
And we will make sure
struggle.
that TCC is nowhere on there moving
Or
forward.
yeah, TCC is under construction.
They're
There's
under
no get out, no getting in.
All right.
Excellent. So we have an agenda. Any member comments?
Make a comment?
Any member comments? Go ahead, Dr. Glenn, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I had an opportunity to read the op-ed that Liza drafted on behalf of the Children's Services Council, and I thought it was very well done. And I just wanted to thank you for representing us in such a very nice way. I appreciate you doing that.
Commissioner Cummings, you're recognized.
Judge Sostrom. I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Watts and Dr. Glenn on being our new chair and co-chair. And I just want to remind Dr. Glenn that I had nominated her initially a year ago and she declined.
She did. So not quite yet.
She was waiting for the big job. She didn't want that vice chair stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other member comments? Well, I'm going to make a member comment. This is my last meeting on the Children's Services Council today. It has been a highlight of my professional career to serve with you. Years ago now, John Moyle came to me and said, "Hey, come on, let's do this. It'll be fun." And man, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Judicial values are modest values. I can summarize the entire code of judicial conduct in 4 words: diligence, competence, integrity, and humility. The statute says that the judge can't vote on the most important thing that this commission decides, which is what is the contribution that we will require of our fellow citizens to make to this cause. And so for a long time, I've been worried about being the chair of the council because of that. Humility is a hard one for everybody. It's a hard one for me. And you start thinking, boy, this is fun to chair this Children's Services Council. And boy, they like me and they need me. The truth of the matter is we are in better hands with Dr. Glenn than we are with me. And just look what she did with the needs assessment.
Yeah.
You couldn't find a better chair. Terrence Watts hardly ever speaks. When he does, he's so quiet and he's so powerful. What Principal Connor has done, what Treasurer Mitchell has done. I've said from the very beginning, what we need are hard-nosed business people who ask hard questions, dig into the details, and will make certain that this council is accountable to the people whose money we're spending. And man, it's been like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And we built it, and you guys came. And Seeker Rose Green came, Ted Granger, Holly, Ms. Clay, Chris Rowe. It's just an amazing thing. So I just want to thank you all for letting me do this work. You are going to love Anthony Miller, who's going to be the judge member starting July 1. And I want to just tell you all how much I appreciate serving with you. It has been a privilege. It has been a privilege. And my exercise of humility is that I know that it is time for me to go. So thank you. Thank you.
And so you couldn't have thought that we were going to let you exit without acknowledging your wonderful work. And so on behalf of the council, we'd like to present you with a little memento that says, presented to Judge Jonathan Shostrom. Thank you for your commitment and dedication as a member and inaugural chair of the CSC Leon County, May 2021 through June 2022.
Thank you. I would like to. You can stand up if you're standing up to take the picture. Let's take a picture.
Yeah, but down at this level. At this level, before the flashback.
We are adjourned.
At this level, as quick as we can.